Alright, time to get into Post-Justice League 5 casting part 1. And the first one is pretty exciting. First off, playing Terry McGinnis is going to be a bit of an out there choice, and that's Dylan O'Brien. He's in his late 20s now, and would technically be too old for this, but again, suspension of disbelief, people. But I think he could still pull off the younger teenager-esque persona that is Terry. Even if that doesn't work, he could still maybe be a slightly older Terry, perhaps in college. Point is, O'Brien is too perfect not to work. Then we have Dana Tan, and I thought Lana Condor would be a good choice, maybe someone a little bit older. Then, for Melanie Walker, I have Katherine Newton for the role, possibly going for someone a little bit older due to the age of O'Brien. Then for the villain, Blight, here's another very different, but I think would be a very good choice, Naveed Nagaban. The man is such an exceptional yet incredibly underrated talent that I've been wanting to use him for a while. However, I couldn't find a role suited enough for him, so I decided to use him here as a very different Derek Powers. Then of course, Ben Affleck and Eva Green would return to their roles. Alright, for Steel, there would be some cameos from other future characters and possibly some super characters like the Superboys, Supergirl, and others. There would only be 3 main actors I would need to cast for this movie. John Henry Irons would be played by John Boyega. He is a bit young, but at this point in the DCEU, it could work, as well as the fact that I think having a younger Irons could be interesting and different. Colonel Thomas Weston would be played by Brian Cox. Yes, he did already play someone similar in X2, but if it ain't broke, don't fix it. Then finally, we have a very young Natasha Irons, and she would be played by Quivinzane Wallace. Again, very small cast, but hey, quality over quantity, right? Next is Requiem. Again, not a lot of characters this time. Here we have Artemis, who will be played by Karen Gillan. I felt that it would be a very obvious choice. Then the villain Deimos would be played by Joseph Fiennes, a very great actor who could definitely nail the role. Alright, Kingdom Come, a fan favorite story. A lot of people, so let's just get through it. James Cromwell is Norman McKay, Liam Neeson is the Spectre, John Hamm is Superman, Lucy Lawless is Wonder Woman, Clint Eastwood is Wesley Dodds, Kevin Conroy is Batman, John Wesley Shipp is the Flash, Ed Harris is Green Lantern, Edgar Ramirez is Hawkman, Kim Basinger is Dinah Lance, Jeff Bridges is Oliver Queen, Gabriel Macht is Captain Comet, Terry O'Quinn is Scott Free, Famke Jensen is Big Barda, Linda Carter is Donna Troy, Brooke Ent is Power Woman, Chris O'Donnell is Red Robin, Liam Cunningham is Lord Orin, Ian Glenn is Orion, Nathan Fillion is Captain Marvel, John Malkovich is Edward Nygma, Finn Wittrock is, hopefully I don't fuck this up too much, Ivan Ozufash. Yeah, I definitely butchered that. Anyway, Clancy Brown is Lex Luthor, Michelle Pfeiffer is Selena Kyle, and Bryan Cranston is John Jones. Obviously, there's a lot more characters than this, but I'm only doing the major ones because if I did every character, this would take 20 minutes. Alright, now we have a bigger cast with Doom Patrol 2. First, we have Celsius, and she would be played by Naomi Scott. I would be doing something different than her comic portrayal and being younger than her original counterpart, as well as not having a romantic relationship with Niles, because that would be weird. Then we have Dorothy Spinner, and she would be played by Millie Shapiro. I think it would be kind of amusing to have the original adaptation of Dorothy in the show be played by Abigail Shapiro, and this version to be played by her sister. She's a very good actress, and I think she would knock it out of the park. Then Kid Slick would be played by Dylan Minnette. Despite being in a rather terrible show, he's actually a good actor and has done some quality work in the past. Then The Brain would be voiced by Michael Ironside. It would just be a voice, so I think he could do the dual role as both this and Darkseid. Then Monsieur Mala would be played by Keith David. He's played Solivar in The Flash, and I think it would be interesting if he did play a more villainous role. Madame Rouge would be played by Angelina Jolie, Gargwax would be played by Mark Hamill, and Phobia would be played by Lea Seydoux. Alright, now on to Lobo. There wouldn't be a ton of a supporting cast with the exception of a couple other bounty hunters in addition to Lobo. You could get a big wrestler for Lobo, but since a certain someone isn't Aquaman anymore, Jason Momoa would be perfect. He is a good actor and he's a big dude. He's got the look for it, and I think he would be awesome, and would be a better fit for someone like Lobo. Then for other bounty hunters in the film, they would be Bedlam, played by Milo Gibson, Bolfunga, played by Michael Jai White, Flicker, played by Jeremy Davies, Layla, played by Connor Leslie, and Tara Karn, played by Rose Leslie, no relation. Now we get to Injustice, and this is a big one. Let's just get through it. Batman, played by Anson Mount, Superman, played by Michael Fassbender, Cyborg, played by O'Shea Jackson Jr., The Flash, played by Ryan Gosling, Green Arrow, played by Jack Lowden, Green Lantern, played by Sam Worthington, Wonder Woman, played by Morena Baccarin, Jimmy Olsen would be played by Emery Cohen, and Lois Lane would be played by Janet Kidder in their very small roles. Doomsday, played by Ray Porter, Harley Quinn, played by Samara Weaving, Joker, played by Cameron Monaghan, Scarecrow, played by Jackie Earle Haley, Hawkgirl, played by Alicia Debnam Carey, Shazam, played by Brandon Routh, Nightwing, played by Zac Efron, Raven, played by Alexandra Daddario, John Kent, played by Harrison Ford, Martha Kent, played by Julianne Moore, Damian Wayne, played by Aidan Gallagher, Aquaman, played by Alexander Ludwig, Galaxer, played by Liam Hemsworth, Batwoman, played by Jenna Malone, Black Canary, played by Blake Lively, Black Lightning, played by Leroyce Hawkins, Captain Atom, played by David Boreanaz, Catwoman, played by Charlize Theron, Huntress, played by Connor Leslie, Martian Manhunter, played by Jackie Ido, Alfred Pennyworth, played by Liam Cunningham, Lex Luthor, played by Michael Rosenbaum, Black Adam, played by Rodolfo Valenti, Jor-El, played by Tom Welling, Kyle Rayner, played by Dylan O'Brien, Barbara Gordon, played by Jane Levy, Zatanna, played by Anya Chalotra, Guy Gardner, played by Jimmy Tatro, Carol Ferris, played by Allison Williams, Dr. Fate, played by Sean Bean, Hippolyta, played by Linda Carter, Jim Gordon, played by Bryan Cranston, Sinestro, played by Oscar Isaac, Harvey Bullock, played by Holt McCallany, Renee Montoya, played by Audrey Arjona, Jon Stewart, played by Corey Reynolds, John Constantine, played by Alexander Skarsgård, Detective Chimp, voiced by Frank Welker, Trigon, voiced by Keith David, Madame Xanadu, played by Noomi Rapace, The Spectre, played by Vincent Catheiser, and then later Jackie Ido when Martian Manhunter becomes the Spectre. Ragman, played by Joshua Bowman, Deadman, played by Rami Malek, Swamp Thing, played by Derek Mears, Etrigan, played by Vinnie Jones, Clarion, played by Freddie Highmore, Ares, played by Nicolás Coster-Waldau, Plastic Man, played by Ben Schwartz, Poison Ivy, played by Peyton List, Billy Batson, played by Cody Smith-McPhee, Luke O'Brien, played by Finn Wolfhard, Bane, played by Paul White, the body, and Danny Trejo, the voice, Parasite, played by Derek Mears, once again, Killer Croc, played by Jason Statham, Killer Frost, played by January Jones, Bizarro, played by Michael Fassbender, Hawkman, played by Sullivan Stapleton, and Iris West, played by Riley Keough. Okay, next up is Hellblazer. And first things first, I cannot see anyone more perfect for John than Dan Stevens. He was more eccentric in his role in Legion, but if there was any frame of reference for how good he would probably be The Guest, but even that's more subdued than anything. But again, Dan Stevens as Constantine would be perfect. I mean, I used the concept art of him for the poster, so it all works. Then for the smaller characters, Brendan Finn would be played by Stephen Fry, Ellie would be played by Sarah Stevens, Chaz would be played by Matt Smith, and Satan would be played by Benedict Cumberbatch. Next is iVampire, and Andrew Bennett would be played by George McKay. He is a very good actor, and he has that lanky look to him that I think would make him perfect for Bennett. For Mary, I envisioned someone who can take control of a room and would be more so domineering. I think Mia Wasikowska would be a good choice for the role. Zoe Deutsch would play Deborah Dancer, and Peter Stormare would play Dmitry Mishkin. Next up is Zatanna, and she would once again be played by Alexandra Daddario. It's possible that Lulu Wilson would reprise her role as Tracy 13 as well. Deadman would be played by Matthew Good, Amethyst would be played by Amaya Miller, Madame Xanadu would be played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, and Etrigan the Demon would be played by Rory McGann. In terms of new characters for the series, Arnie, who is Zatanna's manager, would be played by Henry Melling, Bloodwind would be played by Winston Duke, Cynthia Reynolds would be played by Francesca Ruscio, Dr. Jaina Bodhi would be played by Glenn Close, Phantom Stranger would be played by Yoan Grufford, Ragman would be played by Josh Bowman, Swamp Thing would be played by Derek Mears, Zachary Zatara would be played by Asia Butterfield, and for a short cameo appearance, Zatara would be played by Jeffrey Pierce. Returning characters from other media would reprise their roles, with James McAvoy as Resurrection Man, George McKay as Andrew Bennett, Millie Bobby Brown as Raven, Isaiah Mustafa as the Spectre, Giovanni Ribisi as Dr. 13, and Donald Gleason as Dr. Fate. Due to the fact that their characters are so closely connected in the comics, maybe Batman would make a cameo. Next is Booster Gold, and I think Billy Magnuson is perfect for the role. He's got the face, the comedic timing, and I cannot see anyone else for the role. Blue Beetle's a bit tougher. When I was doing this a long time ago, Zachary Levi, believe it or not, was my main choice. Then it went to Adam Brody. Funny how these things turn out. Anywho, if I had to now pick anyone for Blue Beetle, I think it would have to be Jake Gyllenhaal. He can do serious and comedy very well, and I think he would be great for the Ted Kord Blue Beetle. For the hybrid, Behemoth would be played by Henry Golding, Gorgon would be played by Ian White, Harpy would be played by Nina Dobrev, Prometheus would be played by Mark Steger, Pterodon would be played by August Deal, Sirocco would be played by Emilia Clarke, and Touch and Go would be played by Mandy Gonzalez. Next is Black Lightning, and since in this film it would be Black Lightning's final mission, he would be a lot older. I'm picking Chiwetel Ejiofor for the role because of this, and is probably one of the more realistic castings I'm doing because around this time, he would be better for the part than right now. Then for Lynn Stewart, I'm picking Tiffany Haddish. She is more known for comedic roles, but I still think she would do fine here because she wouldn't have that big of a role. Zazie Beetz would then be Anissa Pierce, and Jennifer Pierce would be played by Amandla Stenberg. Tobias Well would then be played by Colin Baker. Bit of a strange choice, but he is better in his villain roles, ironically enough. Now we have Power Girl, and for the titular hero, I have Alice Eve in mind for the role. She can actually act and has the bust needed for Power Girl. Henry Cavill and Freya Allen would appear as Superman and Supergirl respectively. Andrew Vinson, who is a love interest for Power Girl, would be played by Arthur Darvill. Helena Wayne and Kal-El would appear in flashbacks, and they would be played by Mary Elizabeth Winstead and James Marsden. I wanted someone a bit younger for the main universe Huntress, but I thought Winstead, even though her as Huntress was tainted because of the movie that shall not be named, would be good for the older Helena Wayne. And then Marsden was always considered for Superman during the 2000s, and I think he would do a good job, so I'm making him the older Kal on Earth 2. Toni Collette would be the Earth 2 Lois Lane. Various members of Infinity Inc. would also appear in flashbacks like Fury, Jade, Brainwave Jr., Northwind, Obsidian, and the Beth Chapel Dr. Midnight, but not substantial enough to be cast. Then the villains would be Force, played by Anthony Misiano, and Divine, played by Alison Brie. Next up is Gotham by Gaslight. Alright, so it seems very obvious that the man who should play Batman here is Robert Pattinson. The man is already playing the role right now, but I think he would be even more perfect as this version of Batman. Then I have Ben Kingsley for Alfred, David Tennant for James Gordon, Ralph Ineson for Jack the Ripper, Hugh Laurie for Sigmund Freud, Carrington Vilmont as Prince Albert Victor, Richard Madden as Harvey Dent, and Ian McKellen as Commissioner Tolliver. For Kamandi, I think a good choice would be Tom Holland. I know he's kind of overused in fan casting nowadays, but looking at Kamandi and then looking at Tom Holland, it's kind of too perfect. Then for Spirit, I have Natalie Allen Lind for the role. For Ben Boxer, I have Robbie Amell, and Dr. Canis, I have Danny Glover. Relatively small cast, but it's for the most part Kamandi on his own. Alright, next up is Just Imagine. For Wayne Williams, I have Trevante Rhodes. For Maria Mendoza, I have Gina Rodriguez. For Salden, I have Shane Topp. For Len Lewis, I have Bradley Cooper. Mary Maxwell, I have Dakota Fanning. Dominic Dark, I have Patrick Stewart. Robin, I have Tyler Hoechlin. For Raymond, I have Charlie Rowe. Joni Jordan, I have Emma Watson. Robert Rogers, I have Eddie Redmayne. Colonel Larry Wilton, I have Michael Biehn. Crisis is played by Dominic Purcell. And for Oracle, I have Mackenzie Davis. Alright, for Justice League Dark, many people would be returning from previous appearances on shows and whatnot. Black Orchid would be played by Serinda Swan, Deadman would be played by Matthew Good, Madame Xanadu would be played by Catherine Zeta-Jones, Amethyst would be played by Amaya Miller, Swamp Thing would be played by Derek Mears, and Zatanna would be played by Alexandra Daddario. For the new characters, Willoughby Kipling would be played by Colin Farrell, Shade the Changing Man would be played by Chris Rankin, Felix Faust would be played by Ben Mendelsohn, and Dr. Mist would be played by Aldous Hodge. Then for Justice League Beyond, Dylan O'Brien, John Boyega, Karen Gillan, and Sam Claflin would be reprising their roles. Chandler Riggs and Peyton List would play the Tornado Twins, Olivia Cook would play Aquagirl, Ki-Hong Lee would play Ryan Choi. Professor Ivo would be played by George Clooney, and Nicholas Grimes would play Amazo. For Young Justice, Dante Pereira Olsen, Joshua Orpin, and McKenna Grace would return to their roles. Noah Schnapp would play Impulse, Abigail Breslin would play Arrowette, and Joey King would play Secret. Alex Hibbert would play Aqualad, and Matthew Davis would play Red Tornado. The two villains for seasons 1 and 2 would be Simon, played by Will Poulter, and Clarion, played by Freddie Highmore. For Captain Atom, Mel Gibson and Lena Headey would return for their roles in the Suicide Squad as General Eiling and Betty Sansucci respectively. It would be a relatively small cast, and Josh Duhamel would play Captain Atom. Ironically, I did this casting before Jupiter's Legacy, but Jupiter's Legacy kind of confirms the fact he would do a really good job. Then Emily Wickersham would play his daughter Peggy, and Sam Hargrave would play his son Randy. Then for Jem, Son of Saturn, Corey Reynolds for Jem, Dennis Haysbert for King Jax, Ornella Moody as Queen Jarla, Julian Richings as Rahani, Paula Patton as Charissa, Michelle Monaghan as Sarah, and Amber Stevens-West as Sin. Then for Legion, Vril Dox II would be played by Mark Jackson, the Durlin would be played by Antonio Banderas, Stardo would be played by Martin Ford, Stealth would be played by Alicia Vikander, Garen Beck would be played by Michael Soka, Larissa Mallard would be played by Jodie Comer, and Lady Cork would be played by Uma Thurman. Then for Hawk and Dove, I have Alex Pettifer as Hawk, Ezra Miller as Dove, Richard Brake as Dakan, Jonathan Aris would play Irwin Hall, and Lily Reinhardt would play Dawn Granger. Alright, now we have Static. Caleb McLaughlin as the titular hero. Chiwetel Ejiofor would now return as the now-retired Black Lightning, aka Jefferson Pierce. Mahershala Ali would be Hot Streak. Brianna Ide would be Daisy Watkins. Jahid Diallo Winston as Larry Wade. Ivan Mallon as Rick Stone. And Hannah Allagood as Frida Gorin. Then we have the Super Sons. Dante Pereira Olsen would once again reprise his role as Damian Wayne, and I think a genuinely perfect casting choice for Superboy is Jackson Robert Scott, who famously played Georgie in It. It's more so his performance in Lock and Key that made me think he would be perfect for the role. He has a wide-eyed optimism in him and has a great balance of annoying and endearing. The only person who would be reprising the role in a big way is Kevin Grevio as Killer Croc, as well as Affleck and Cavill in small cameos. The villains shown in this series would be Anarchy, played by Dane DeHaan, Dr. Hurt, played by Viggo Mortensen, Atlas, played by Dwayne Johnson, Toyman, played by Oliver Masucci, Atomic Skull, played by Oliver Jackson Cohen, Solomon Grundy, voiced by D. Bradley Baker, Victor Zsasz, played by Darren Criss. He surprisingly does creeps pretty well. Ra's al Ghul, played by Ghassan Massoud, Bloodsport, played by Henry Ian Cusick, and The Prankster, played by Seth Green, as well as Silver Banshee, played by Sarah Bolger. Alright. Now we have Doom Patrol 3. Catherine McNamara would play Lodestone, Noah Wiseman would play Blaze, Zoe Kravitz would play Crazy Jane, and Joel Kinnaman would play Metamorpho, and Doug Bradley would play Mr. Nobody. For Justice League Dark 2, pretty much the entire cast from last time would be returning, along with Frank Welker as the voice of Detective Chimp, Ray Park returning as Man-Bat, as well as any scenes of him as Kirk Langstrom, played by Paul McGann, Daniel Craig as Blue Beetle, and Brad Dourif as Kane. Alright, for Orphan, only new characters would be Blackwind, played by Jordan Rodriguez, Brenda Miller, played by Dakota Johnson, and Sal, played by Sam Jelly. Now we have Huntress, and Adrian Pasdar would play Stefano Mandragora, Lorenzo Raquelme would play a journalist named Alessandro, Samara Weaving would play a journalist named Christina, Jessica Lange would play psychologist Evelyn Rosen, and Keith Jarden would play Richard Dragon in a flashback. Damian Lewis and Teresa Palmer would have Small Rose as the Question and Black Canary respectively. Then for the Wonder Twins, Zan and Jaina would be played by Li Wu and Brienne Zhu. The villain would be played by Anthony Kerrigan. Other heroes like Plastic Man, Blue Beetle, King Marvel, and Jesse Quick would all appear and be played by their respected actors. Alright, now we get into the Books of Magic, and there is a fucking shit ton of people. So, gonna just get through this as fast as I possibly can. Tim Hunter would be played by Lewis McGowan. John Constantine would be played by Dan Stevens, Phantom Stranger would be played by Ioan Grufford, Mr. E would be played by Luke Evans, Dr. Occult would be played by Christopher Eccleston, Rose Spiritus would be played by Monica Bellucci, Dead Man would be played by Jamie Dornan, Zatanna would be played by Ana de Armas, Tala, the Queen of Evil, would be played by Juliet Landau, Tanaraq would be played by Zachary Quinto, Felix Faust would be played by Willem Dafoe, Wizard would be played by Hugh Grant, Baba Yaga would be played by Cate Blanchett, Sir Timothy Hunter would be played by Daniel Radcliffe, Tamlin the Falconer would be played by Ian Somerhalder, Queen Titiana would be played by Zoe Saldana, Amadan would be played by Tom Hiddleston, William Hunter would be played by Brendan Gleeson, the Manticore would be played by D. Bradley Baker, Death would be played by Elizabeth Gillies, Molly O'Reilly would be played by Summer Fontana, Barbados would be played by James Earl Jones, Vol would be played by Maggie Smith, Leah / the Mermaid would be played by Isabel Vidovic, Martin would be played by Ted Danson. The Golem / Happy the Golem would be played by John DeSantis. Reverend Slaggingham would be played by Julian Richings. Sister Staley / Gwendolyn would be played by Maggie Savantos. Daniel would be played by Adam Driver. Mario would be played by Bonnie Wright. Tangle would be played by an unknown. Crimple would be played by an unknown. Cersei the Tattooist would be played by Rachel Weisz. Juan the Small would be played by Sean Gunn. Prince the Horse / Prince Tyke would be played by Cole Sprouse. Kara would be played by Dana Guerrera. Erica would be played by Alex Rowe. Mr. Vasuki would be played by James Hong. Sorrel Ransom would be played by Jovan Armand. Lady of Cheap Cosmetics would be played by Vera Farmiga. Queen of the Wounds would be played by Jessica Chastain. The Other would be played by Daniel Radcliffe once again. Holly Hunter would be played by Bryce Dallas Howard. Thomas Curie would be played by Richard Brake. Davis Duvall would be played by Owen Vaccaro. Mr. Robbins would be played by Robert Sheehan. Joe would be played by Pietro Quintella. Dionysus would be played by Joey Beatty. The Lord of the Hunt would be played by Kieran Hines. Veja would be played by Olivia Colman. And Alphanu Lesas would be played by Lena Headey. Whew! Okay, moving on. Next up would be Hitman. Tommy Monahan would be played by Joe Manganiello. Nat the Hat would be played by Jamie Foxx. Sean Noonan would be played by Bruce Campbell. Ringo Chen would be played by Ian Anthony Dale. Deborah Teagle would be played by Denai Guerrera. Hacken would be played by Martin Ford. Six Pack would be played by Josh Gad. Sister Concepto would be played by Ellen Bernstein. Wendy would be played by Rose Byrne. Bader would be played by Bern Gorman. Maggie Lorenzo would be played by Una Chaplin. Catherine McAllister would be played by Gillian Anderson. And Etrigan the Demon would be played by Rory McGann. That is it for right now. Next up is going to be Post-Justice League 5 casting part 2.